Okay, so let's jump right in. Have you ever stopped to think about how much history can be crammed into just one single day on the calendar? It turns out that one date, April 20th, is a wild study in contrasts, a day that holds moments that built nations and others that threatened to tear them apart.
So that's really the big question we're tackling here, right? Can one day, just one little square on the calendar, actually build and break history? Well, the story of April 20th kind of screams yes. Let's dig in and see why.
All right, first up, let's talk about the foundations. We're going to look at these moments on April 20th that were all about, forging the rules, creating systems, and really laying down the bedrock of a nation. Okay, check this out. We've got two events here separated by more than a century and a half. First, way back in 1777, smack in the middle of the Revolutionary War, you've got New York creating its very first constitution, a huge deal. Then you fast forward 156 years to 1933. President Franklin D. Roosevelt takes the entire country off the gold standard, a massive move to fight the Great Depression. Totally different times, right? But both of them were these massive foundational acts of building and stabilizing a nation. But here's the flip side. For every moment of building, there's another that breaks things. The exact same day, April 20th, is also stamped with these moments of deep, deep division, times when the country itself just fractured. And wow, does this moment just cut right to the heart of it. April 20th, 1861, you have Colonel Robert E. Lee. He's literally offered command of the entire Union Army. But what does he do? He resigns. He just couldn't bring himself to fight against his home state of Virginia. Think about that choice. It's not just a military decision. It's this huge personal crack that mirrors the split of the entire nation right at the dawn of the Civil War. And these fractures, they weren't just political, North versus South. In 1914, you see this violent explosion of class warfare, the Ludlow Massacre. It was just this incredibly brutal clash between striking coal miners and the National Guard out in Colorado. It became this huge symbol, a real rallying cry for the American labor movement, and it just lays bare the massive divides that existed back then. The fight for civil rights is this long, long road, and April 20th pops up at some really key moments. Look at this. In 1871, you get the KKK Act, a law specifically designed to fight back against violence aimed at African Americans. 100 years later, to the year, in 1971, the Supreme Court makes a landmark ruling that says, yes, busing is a constitutional way to desegregate schools. And then, less than a decade later, in 1980, the Mariel boat lift starts, bringing thousands of Cuban refugees to Florida and kicking off a whole new chapter and a whole new debate about immigration in America. And it wasn't just America splitting at the seams. On this very day, in 1946, the world's first big swing at global cooperation, the League of Nations officially called it quits. It had failed to stop World War II, so its end was this massive crack in the whole idea of international peace. Of course, its failure did set the stage for its successor, what we now know as the UN. Okay, let's shift gears, because April 20th isn't all about politics and nations. Far from it. It's also a day that's seen some absolutely jaw-dropping individual achievements, moments where single people just shattered records and broke down barriers. 63? It's just a number, right? What's the big deal? Well, if you're a basketball fan, this number is everything. It's legendary. It's an NBA playoff scoring record that's been on the books for decades, set by a young guy against what some people call the greatest team of all time. And that quote right there, that says it all. Larry Bird, a legend himself, called it God disguised as Michael Jordan. On April 20th, 1986, a young Michael Jordan dropped those 63 points on Bird's Boston Celtics. And yeah, the Bulls actually lost that game. But it didn't matter. Everyone watching knew that performance was Jordan telling the world, I'm here. A true icon was born. All right, fast forward 22 years, another barrier, another sport. Same date. In 2008, Danica Patrick did something no woman had ever done before. She won an IndyCar Series race. It was a massive, historic victory, not just for her, but a huge moment for women in sports all over the world. But for all the triumphs, we have to talk about the other side of this day. April 20th also holds some of the most difficult, most somber anniversaries in modern American history. These are tragedies that really left a permanent scar. On April 20th, 1999, Columbine. It was an absolutely horrific event that just ripped a community apart, but its impact went so much further. It completely and permanently changed the conversation in America about school safety, about guns, about everything. And then, 11 years later, to the very day, a different kind of tragedy hits. The Deepwater Horizon, a massive oil rig out in the Gulf of Mexico, explodes. And this explosion sets off one of the worst environmental disasters we've ever seen. The fallout was just catastrophic. 11 people died in that explosion. The oil spill that followed became the single largest in U.S. history. The environmental damage, it was massive, and its effects are still being felt today. Just a grim reminder of the real-world risks of our energy needs. So, there you have it. Triumphs and tragedies, lulls and rebellions, all packed into one 24-hour cycle on the calendar. We've seen nations being built and unions being broken. We've seen incredible individual achievement and just devastating loss. A single day really can contain the whole spectrum of what it means to be human. And that kind of leaves you wondering, right? If one day can hold all that contrast, what does that tell us about the complex, contradictory story that we're all living through right now?